Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is enjoying another Saturday. Uh, Here it is little cold, and you could tell it by I'm wearing a sweater and obviously a bright red one. And let's welcome everyone who has joined us from different parts of the world and looking forward to another learning session. We can obviously see a lot of people are joining live and a lot of you would be watching afterwards also. So we thank you everyone for your commitment to join this program and keep on learning and enhancing your cloud skills. So while we wait for others to join, let me ask a question to all of you. It's a festival season coming up. I'm sure everyone is looking forward to something or the other. So my question to you all is that what is the festival you are looking forward to? Yeah, waiting for that. Like I would say mine in a minute, but let me know what you all are looking forward to. What festival you cherish the most, and you always wait for that. I can see some comments coming in. And while this happens, let me add other people to the chat, to the screen so that we can get started. So let me add Carol to here first. Carol is going to conduct the session today. Then we have Prasad, and Prasad is answering questions on the chat. We also have Purna with us. And then we have Kavya, who is also be presenting. And then we have Shashank after a long time, seeing him here. And let me add him also to stay. So yeah, full house, and we are all looking forward to share our learnings with you. And while we do this, let me ask each of you, Prasad, in the same order, Prasad, Carol, Purna, Kavya, and Shashank, what is the festival you are particularly looking forward to?
Yeah, for me, it's obviously Diwali,
Carol?
right?
Diwali, exactly. That's the same thing. So yeah, means same for me, Prasad. Like I use this time to talk about myself also. So I'm going to India for Diwali. So obviously a good time, and I like it more for because I get to eat a lot of sweets. So that's my motivation to go and enjoy the
Yes,
festival.
same here. I have a very
How?
sweet tooth, and Diwali is the time when I always gain weight.
Exactly. How about you, Carol?
Honestly, it's really bizarre. I love Halloween. I love
Oh,
people
oh
getting
wow.
dressed up in costumes. I love the skeletons. I love all the zombies and all the little kids in their costumes. And of course, I love candy as well. So, yeah, I'd have to say Halloween.
Great. Let's start with Parna.
Yeah, I like Navratri, which coincides with Durga Pujas because I
Mm-hmm.
celebrate that, and I like the dancing, the garba that
Oh,
we
the
do.
Garba thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and yeah, of course, I love Diwali. I just like the atmosphere of Diwali with all everything lit up. That's a very positive vibe. So that's what I love.
Exactly. That's true. Thank you. How about you, Kavya?
I am waiting for Diwali. Diwali is especially so special to me because my father's birthday is traditionally celebrated every year on Diwali. So it's like a
Oh,
double
nice.
festival for me.
So, 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 so you're saving on two treats, right? Means instead of two
Yes.
treats, you just settle into one. Come on. How about you, Shashank?
Diwali and Uttarayan.
Uttarayan.
Diwali
Yeah,
is
that is a
something
nice
which
one
is
too.
like long, yeah, year end. Yeah, it's like year end begins with Diwali, Navratri Diwali, and year end is over, and begin the new year with Uttarayan. That's something. Yeah. Festival
Hmm.
of kites. I love it.
Nice. Yeah, the Dhanuchi dance that Abhishek is talking about, Maharashtrian been both places for Ahmedabad and Kolkata. So nice one. Thank you, everyone. So let's get started with the session. I'll quickly talk about what we are going to discuss today, and then we will keep on moving forward. I'll remove others from the screen, and then we'll add them as then needed. So I'll brief you about where we are, what we are going to do, and what would be expected from you once you complete this particular session. So talking about, we have completed 4 weeks so far and done a lots and lots of technical as well as behavioral discussion. And we are on 4th October today about modernization patterns and pathways on AWS. So obviously customer migrate their workload to cloud and they want to leverage the best out of the cloud, then that's why they have to modernize it. And that's what we'll be discussing today. So last two sessions, 4th and 11th October, are purely focused on modernization. A lot of people know about migration, but modernization could be really interesting subject also. So pay attention, and you would be hearing lots and lots of practical tips to get started with that. And then on the behavioral side, we will have communication across organizational levels and managing stakeholder relationship. As a SA, you have to do a lot of communication, upward also, downward also, and in your lateral directions too. So that's why we have to focus on that. And you have a project where multiple stakeholders are present. So how to manage those expectations, that's what we'll be discussing. So we'll talk about that. So for the first track, I'd invite Carol and Kavya. They would talk about modernization pattern and pathways on AWS. And then we would have Shashank and Parna will talk about communication across organization. Now, one more thing here, like we all have these badges, and we can see from LinkedIn, a lot of people are going for these badges. So appreciate it. Keep on learning and share your badges. So that's where we will have week 5 for modernization patterns and pathways on AWS. The quizzes would go live after the session, maybe an hour or two time. And then we would also update the slide deck on the same place where you get for the quiz. You do not get a separate email for the quiz. You just go to your dashboard, and from that dashboard, you should be able to pick up the quiz and then get started. And you can revisit the content also, which we highly recommend. So that is we are here. And people who are following us and then doing all the quizzes, it's obviously a good way to earn certification too. So what you would have a certification coming up once you pass all the 6 badges. So that's all there. So let me not stop you from learning more. Let me add Carol and Kavya, and we will get started. So over to you, Carol, and I'll add Kavya also. I'll remove my screen share and I'll add yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. That was a great introduction. And let me know when my screen's available and we'll start.
Let me add it. Just give me a minute. Yeah, all good. Go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. As I was previously introduced, my name is Carol Schwartz. I am a senior modernization SA at AWS, and today I'm going to be presenting along with Kavya, and we will be covering modernization patterns and pathways. Kavya, do you want to do a little brief introduction?
Yeah, for sure. Hello, everyone. This is Kavya, and I'm an enterprise solutions architect at AWS, and I support Greenfield customers. And I'll be showing a small demo today based on Carol's presentation, and really excited for this presentation today.
Awesome. And all right. So again, we are doing modernization patterns and pathways on AWS. So let's dive right in and do a little bit of backing up here and try to understand, why does modernization matter? So notice that this slide is about why modernization matters to the people who run the company. Just as the benefits of migrating to the cloud go beyond total cost of ownership savings, the benefits of modernization, like switching from Amazon EC2 compute to a serverless architecture, also go beyond the total cost of ownership savings. The metrics we are showing here really do matter to your CIOs, your CTOs, your leadership team, and those are the folks who are investing and wanting to spend their money on everything, whether it's the technology or salaries, to actually do that modernization. So, notice right up there at the top, revenue growth and reduction in IT spend often catch their attention. All right. Opinions are like elbows. We all have them. And depending on who you ask, the perception of modernization may vary. Some feel that simply moving an application to the cloud without refactoring is modernization. This can become a challenge for many companies that move to the cloud, as cloud services are more inherently designed for high-performing, agile, secure by design workloads. But more importantly, running legacy systems on standard servers, even if they're virtual machines, is expensive. Some view the use of any cloud service as inherently modern. For instance, one managing director of IT of a financial services firm actually said, cloud modernization is an oxymoron. Isn't the cloud itself modern? Moreover, there is no single pathway to cloud modernization. A senior director of IT for a retail company said, our next modernization is around automation and machine learning. A VP for a media company said, I would say using database service would be a good example of cloud modernization. To overcome the challenge of varying opinions and perceptions on what modernization is, at AWS, we use what we call the AWS Cloud Value Framework to score a workload's modernization based on value to the business, cost savings, business agility, operational resilience, and staff productivity. We also use a common definition for modernization, and that's what you see up on your screen. Modernization is the refactoring of legacy technology by combining modern infrastructure, architecture, organization patterns together to maximize resiliency, engineering efficiency, and business agility. All right. There are 3 pillars of modernization that you'll need to address. These include, and I'm going to go kind of backwards here, ops and governance at scale, people, process, and culture, and technology and architecture. Governance at scale means as you modernize, you need to build automation into anything and everything you do. This will allow you to scale your organization exponentially. There is an upfront investment in you have to do in the beginning, but it will pay off as you scale your workloads and people. And a big piece of this are those guardrails. So as someone who has done a ton of development, I love it when I have good guardrails. I don't want to worry about whether or not I'm going to accidentally take something down in production or leave something wide open that shouldn't be open to the world, like IP, CIDR, all of those things. So that's what your governance at scale is, and you got to be prepared for that. People and process is also really important. As part of doing a technology modernization, you'll also have to modernize the way your people work. This means moving from a traditional departmentalized view of end-to-end processes to an independent product team using agile methodologies. Finally, we get to the technology and architecture. This is the actual modernization of your applications and your infrastructure that will allow you to move quicker and minimize operation overhead.
So, Carol, if someone is getting started with modernization and have their legacy applications, where do they actually start?
So, I think the most basic first step is really going to be to gain that executive buy-in from your leadership on modernization. Gain that leadership influence and ensure the leadership understands the value of modernization so that they back you up in all of the decisions. Kind of the same way I just introduced why modernization matters to you all. That's a great place to start for your, what's really first.
Got it. Thank you.
So one of the key benefits of modernization is the ability to shift that operational responsibilities, allowing you to free up resources to do more value add and innovation-led activities. In AWS, there is a spectrum of shared responsibility options across different levels of modernization, ranging from EC2, where you can build and run things, but you have to manage everything else, the integrations, the scaling, security configurations, provisioning, patching, blah, 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 in addition to your code, to all the way up at the top to serverless functions like Lambda, where all you manage is your application code.
Got it. Would you mind explaining us what are serverless functions?
So serverless functions is a little bit of a misnomer. Serverless means that you do not run any servers. It actually runs in a control plane. Whether no matter which cloud you're in, if you're using a serverless capability, you are not going to actually access that server and configure it and worry about the operating system. It's actually running on something probably kind of similar to what feels like a container environment, if you're used to that, or something similar. But basically, you don't know, but you get instantiations where your code's going to run, and it'll automatically scale for you.
Got it. And that's the highest level of modernization.
So true serverless is, we consider the highest level of modernization. So cloud native services is really where you want to focus on that. So It may not be true, like totally serverless, but it's a managed service, something like DynamoDB. We have all kinds of things like SNS, SQS, API Gateway, ECS with Fargate. All of those services are pretty much hands-off and definitely considered cloud native.
Okay.
Good questions. Thanks. Put me on the spot. Okay, you get it. You understand the value of modernization. So how do you do it? Let's assume we've gained executive leadership and buy-in on modernization, and we've got our people and process and ops and governance at scales, pillars completed and in place. Now we can learn how to actually modernize our applications. All right, so what's first? We need to identify an application to modernize. How do we do that? We must choose wisely. You must. We want to focus on the applications with high business value and high scale or impact. The top priority for modernization is the application with the highest business value and highest impact, followed by the highest business value with medium impact. That doesn't mean necessarily you want to do it in that order, and as a matter of fact, most customers are more comfortable starting with a smaller scale application for simplicity, and that's totally fine. But you need to encourage them to avoid starting with applications that have low business value. It's important to get early wins with measurable value and impact, so that you actually can get that leadership continues to buy in.
Got it.
All right, so here's a little cheat sheet for you. Your application selection criteria. Here are some business indicators that an application is high value or high impact. Modernizing these applications will show big wins and create excitement by the business folks who use them, creating excellent momentum in your modernization journey. Of course, you see that significant impact to revenue. All right, so another cheat sheet for you. So here are your technical indicators that an application may have a lot of opportunity for modernization, and maybe a few easy wins in here. I think maybe we have all seen a few applications that are so old and crusty that very few people still have knowledge of how to fix them. And that one where it says spaghetti code down there definitely brings back some PTSD for me. All right, so, okay, you get it. I know how to pick an application now. How do I modernize it? We're going to now kind of move into our modernization pathways. And this is something specific to AWS. There may be other various flavors of this all over the place, but what I'm presenting to you today is how we do modernization pathways at AWS. Once you've identified which applications to modernize, you'll need to identify how to modernize each and create repeatable modernization patterns. Modernization pathways is one framework we use at AWS to categorize applications for modernization. This isn't an exhaustive list, but these are the most common pathways. AWS modernization pathways are a set of structured, prescriptive strategies designed to guide organizations in transforming legacy applications and infrastructure to leverage cloud-native services, reduce technical debt, unlock innovation on AWS. These pathways provide a roadmap to modernize applications by adopting specific technologies, such as moving to microservices that we're going to talk a lot more about today, moving to microservices with containers, using managed databases, integrating AI, helping to align technical changes with business outcomes. So really quickly, I'm just going to run through here about each of these pathways. Move to cloud native, that's decomposing monolith applications into smaller microservices to improve agility and efficiency. Move to containers is using containerization for faster, more reliable and scalable deployments of applications. Move to open source is shifting from commercial licenses to open source solutions, such as from Windows to Linux or commercial database to PostgreSQL. Move to manage databases. That's migrating to fully managed cloud-native databases to reduce that operational burden. Move to managed analytics is leveraging AWS managed services for modern data lakes and analytics platforms. Move to modern DevOps is another one of my favorites besides the move to cloud native, and that's implementing practices like continuous integration, continuous delivery, or CI/CD, infrastructure as code, and test-driven development. All right. So those are our pathways. So how do they fit in? And if you'll see on the screen, we've got kind of a AWS-ified flavor of the 6, or depending on who you talk to, 7 R's of moving to the cloud, and the different patterns. We've got rehost, relocate, replatform, refactor, repurchase, retain, and retire. And so where does the pathways fit in? There's a full spectrum of patterns for migrating and modernizing on the cloud, and they can be activated early in your transformation journey. Migration and modernization can also be run in parallel, so that modernization is introduced early into that transformation journey. And what you'll see here on the screen is where our modernization pathways fit in, is in that replatform and refactor spaces. So our typical IT environment that we see may be a little bit different now. We've had this slide around for a long time, but 20% of typical IT environment is looking to replatform, and that's at an enterprise level. And 5 to 10% is looking to refactor, even though I would say refactor is probably going to give you the biggest bang for your buck overall. All right. Okay, so we talked about those modernization pathways on AWS. Let's get into some of the real technical stuff here and talk about modernization patterns. So let's assume you've chosen a couple of pathways that suit the requirements of your application. Now we need to look at some of these patterns. And for our sake, we're going to say that we chose to implement move to cloud native, of course, and maybe yeah, let's just start with move to cloud native. All right, so our first pattern, which I struggle even calling it a pattern, but it definitely is kind of an architectural direction. Microservices are minimal function services that are deployed separately, but can interact together to achieve a broader use case. When monoliths become too big to scale efficiently, we have to make a couple of big changes. One is architectural and the other one's organizational. So typically in a big monolith, we have teams that are big, huge teams, and they're all working on different parts of this application, and you have to coordinate your releases together. So with microservices, teams are decoupled, and they independently architect, develop, deploy, and maintain each microservice. Typically, what we strive for is to have each microservice have its own data store or database, and each microservice is actually fully decentralized. So no single database, no top-down anything. Microservices typically support polyglot development, meaning each microservice team is free to pick the best technology, and microservices are released and deployed using DevOps principles. Automated setup, and developers own production, and the developers own the production support.
I do have a question from our audience here. It's related to microservices as well. It says, some years back, there was a furor about too much breakdown into microservices, resulting in overhead resulting from service proliferation. Any thoughts on this, Carol?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a happy medium for sure. That said, one of the patterns that I'm going to talk about today, architectural pattern, is an orchestration pattern that really helps. But I have seen people, teams actually go a little bit too far with the microservice, and every little tiny thing is its own function and deployed separately. And, it's really hard to keep track of it at that point and miss it if something needs to be updated. Now, granted, you'll find it, but being a microservice, it's going to take a little longer because you're not going to break things if you are architecting your microservice ecosystem correctly.
Mm-hmm. Thank you,
So
Fran.
that kind of falls into one of the questions you and I were talking about previously, Kavya, is how do teams decide the right size for a microservice? And I think you had asked me that, and I'm like, oh man, that's a really great question, and probably a lot more than I can cover here today. But one of the things you definitely want to look at when you're moving towards microservices is aligning with business domains, maybe using domain-driven design. And in domain-driven design, we have these bounded contexts. That's a great way to kind of put those bounded context borders around your microservice. All right, so our second pattern after microservices, which is more, again, kind of an architectural approach. So our first true pattern that many people have probably heard of before is the strangler fig pattern. So I will let you all go look up, just to save time, exactly what Martin Fowler did to discover what the strangler fig was. But it is probably one of the most well-known patterns for modernizing legacy applications. Just like the strangler fig tree, developers can break apart a large monolith application into microservices over time. So let's say you can strangle out one branch of your tree and create that function that's in there as a microservice, and the rest of that monolithic tree still remains. So by doing so, the time and effort you needed to replace a monolith is much more easily managed and absorbed, or as I like to say, digested and planned for in much smaller increments, just like you want your code. So that's an overview of what the strangler fig pattern is. Now I'm going to dive in a little bit into, first, we're going to go through generic architecture and then what it looks like in AWS architecture. So consider this monolithic application. It's a very typical 3-tier retail web app with a storefront UI server, an application server where all of the processing resides, and a big monolithic database at the back end. Let's look at how to modernize this. Your first step is to add a proxy layer between the storefront UI and the monolithic application. At the start, the proxy routes all the traffic to the monolithic application. All it does is pass the traffic to the mid layer right now. So traffic's going right on through, that proxy just passes it along. Second step, and this is really important, and I almost took this out just for time's sake, but I'm like, this is actually very, very important. You need to make a mandate once you start doing the strangler fig pattern that any new capabilities, new features, in this case, we're just going to call it new service, needs to be added as a microservice using the new pattern. So from now on, you're going to make all new capabilities new microservices. When you want to add features to your application, you implement them as microservices instead of adding features to the existing monolith. However, you continue to fix bugs in that existing monolith to ensure application stability. In this diagram, the proxy layer routes the calls to the monolith or the new microservice based on the API URL. All right, so I added this in here to sneak in yet another pattern in itself here. So you have another kind of modernization pattern to think through. The user service in this diagram has been refactored and moved to a microservice. You see how it's grayed out here, and we've got a new user service. The cart service calls the user service, but the implementation is no longer available within that monolith. Also, the interface of the newly migrated service might not match its previous interface inside that monolithic application. To address these changes, you implement an anti-corruption layer, or we're going to call it ACL. Sorry, I understand that you saying ACL might be a little bit confusing, but it is what it is. Anti-corruption layer is what we're talking about on this screen. During the migration process, when the features within the monolith need to call the features that were migrated as microservices, the ACL converts those calls to the new interface and routes them to the appropriate microservice. So let's say this cart service tries to make this call. And since we added this little bit of code that says intercept that traffic and send it to the new user service microservice. All right, so another step here that you may or may not need. As a best practice, the microservice should own its own data in its own data store or database. This user's service stores its data in its own data store. It might need to synchronize data with a monolithic database to handle dependencies such as reporting and to support downstream applications that are not yet ready to access the microservices directly. The monolithic application might also require the data for other functions and components that haven't been migrated yet. So in other words, that cart service may need to look something up in the database that is stored from the user service. And unless you have a synchronizing agent, which is just basically, you can have a queue that calls a Lambda or something on ECS Fargate that says synchronize this data, and keep that in sync until everything is migrated for that user service off that database. Sometimes I will say that I've seen it where application teams will just plan to make sure that as they create the new microservice, they don't like to do that synchronizing agent, but it's really pretty simple to implement.
So there is a question for us asking, what is proxy here? Is it load balancer or API gateway?
That's a really good question. So bear with me. I'm going to run through just a high level architecture. We're going to keep calling it proxy because right after this, I have a very brief architecture of exactly which services you're going to use in AWS. So hang on to that's a great question. And that is why we left that AWS architecture in there, even though we're giving you the basics, just so we can show you how it's done. All right. So as you see, you move additional services out of the monolith, and note that when the cart service has been migrated, since that was the one that was calling the user service, you get rid of that ACL or anti-corruption layer. And because we don't have anything else right now that's interfacing with the microservices, we're no longer synchronizing that monolithic database. But this is all theoretical right now because we don't know what data it needs. For all we know, until that account service finally gets moved over as well, you need to synchronize with the database, but that's fine. Just remember to cut off that synchronization when the time comes so you can turn off that awful big monolithic database that nobody wants to manage anymore. All right, so let's get into the AWS architecture. I think this is super fun. So this is the exact same situation. We've got a big monolithic application, 3-tiered web app. Well, let's say it's a retail website and we're selling widgets. You have the storefront user interface on EC2. And a lot of customers, when they migrate to AWS, they will actually switch right away to S3 and CloudFront or something else like AppSync. But just for our sake, we're going to say that they've already migrated. They put everything on EC2. So front-end website is on EC2, mid-tier on EC2, and a big old Oracle database on EC2 in the back end. So first step, we're going to say, for my own sanity's sake, that we are going to rehost that storefront website on S3 or Amplify. Amplify was what I was thinking of, not AppSync, but AppSync can do something kind of similar, and that's a little preview of what's to come. And the rest of it is all exactly the same. So we've got a mid-tier on EC2, monolith database on EC2. The very first thing you're going to do is put that proxy in there. And the way you can do this really easily in AWS is via Amazon API Gateway. Amazon API Gateway has a feature that allows you to create a single greedy path or greedy method that is called Proxy Plus, and it basically proxies all traffic to the monolith. This feature, if you set it up, it basically means all traffic goes to this monolith unless another path name is designated or another URL is used. So for now, it's good. It's like the default. Hey, everything go to the monolith. Next, we're going to do that new service, of course. So we're adding a microservice on Lambda with a DynamoDB. And notice that the path here, and I wasn't creative enough to come up with a good name for this, I apologize, but we're calling it new. So it'll be like www.storefront.blah, blah, blah /new. And then the API gateway knows to send it to this new microservice. Everything else, because the default or greedy path is proxy plus, is going to go straight to the monolith. Of course, the first thing we're going to do, just like we did in the generic version, is create another microservice. And this time we're going to use a API URL of /user. And when we do that, we get rid of the user in the monolith. I didn't go in through just to save time. You hopefully understand this is where we probably put in an anti-corruption layer, some code that says reroute user to the microservice if it needed it. And then, of course, the cart. And as we go through the cart and we get to the account, we've basically strangled everything out at this point. Using microservices, we can get rid of the greedy path and shut down that database. So hopefully that was a good way for you, very high level, on how to develop something like this in AWS to strangle out your monolith. Okay, great. Let's do a couple of modern integration patterns. So when I was trying to think which patterns to choose, I know that everybody's been really excited and we've all been hyper-focused on doing things with various Gen AI tooling, and especially probably for those of us who are working in AWS, we are constantly needing to figure out how to integrate all of these things with our Gen AI tools, with other services in AWS once you get there. So I decided to choose a couple of modern integration patterns. And you can use these patterns to connect to other AWS services. And again, integrate with your, Agent Core, Bedrock. I just did something recently with Strands agents. So integration is really important. And that's why these modern integration patterns are here for you. All right. So we're going to run through this publish subscribe, also known as the fan out pattern. And you can see why once we get there. This is a great way to say you need to notify and send an event to multiple downstream consumers. You could, if you prefer to think of it this way, maybe your downstream consumers are an agent, Strands agent, Bedrock agent. So if you mentally like to replace what I've got here in your head with something like that, you're more than welcome to do so. All right, so let's say that you are a rideshare driver. Here in the US, the popular ones are Lyft and Uber. And you have a side hustle where you are driving some folks around and you need to submit a rideshare completion to your company in order to get paid. The publish, subscribe, or fan out pattern is how we're going to manage all of those downstream functions. Here we have the ride management service. The main part is the Lambda for the application that processes the ride completion. That's great. The driver submits the ride completion and it has been stored into the completed rides database. But the company needs to do a bunch of downstream things with that information. By using Amazon Simple Notification Service, or SNS, we can use one simple SNS topic to fan out the data to all of the downstream consumers. By sending the event to the SNS topic, we can then notify the customer who is a subscriber, notify the accounting service, and maybe that's another Lambda, or maybe that's a SQSQ, but that is subscribed to that SNS topic. A customer loyalty service needs to be notified with that event. And of course, we want to put this event into the data lake. So there's one more thing that we can do with SNS that's extremely useful. We have one service here called the extraordinary ride service that should only get this notification if the ride was longer than a certain distance and if the fare was above a certain amount. Do you need to create something different in your topic? No, you don't. You don't need to change anything. The subscriber can have a message filter on it that says it's the exact same topic. They're still subscribing, but they're putting a filter on it that says, I only want to see rides when the fare is greater than X and the distance is greater than Y. So by allowing the subscriber to the topic, add a message filter, then it simplifies that ownership model as well. And it's a really great way to notify everyone of the exact same event all at the same time, and allowing subscribers to do things like filter out messages to only the stuff they care about. All right.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So before
Go
going
ahead.
into the next topic, so there's a question about our previous discussion saying if each microservice has its own DB storage, what about the kind of data consolidation required for data warehousing, data lakes, reporting, etc.?
So it kind of depends. There was another pattern, but when I ran through the timing of this presentation, there is another pattern called the scatter gather pattern, which is great for things like when you want to send a notification somewhere and get a response back, but you need to do it asynchronously. That's a great pattern that you could also do to send information to a centralized data store. But you want to be very, very careful about that, because you do start creating dependencies. In an ideal world, everybody would be able to go to the individual databases to get that information live as they needed it. But the truth of the matter is, often we'll have reporting databases that are read only copies of the data, and that's absolutely where you can trigger something like a synchronization agent that'll put that data back into some kind of a central data store. Just be careful that you don't create a whole lot of dependencies on the way that data is formatted, because if you ever want to change something in a microservice and there's dependence on exactly how that data is being consumed, and you change that, you've broken stuff that you didn't want to break, and that you're recoupling things. So you got to be careful about it.
Got it. So it's scatter gather pattern.
Scatter gather. Actually, there's another one that I definitely recommend looking up. I think it's CQRS pattern, which actually does, and I think you could combine like Saga orchestration with CQRS, and the CQRS pattern is really meant for big data stores like that. Okay. So even in AWS, if you go to AWS prescriptive guidance and look for CQRS pattern, you can see some other ways to modernize that include maintaining a large data store like that.
That's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So we are abandoning our driver here. Not really, because now I'm going to talk about our last pattern before I turn it over to you, Kavya, to run through a little demo for us. We're going to talk about Saga orchestration. Why? Because I love it. This addresses a few of the questions that have been asked already. So it's a design pattern that uses a central coordinator or orchestrator to manage the flow and transactions across multiple microservices. So if you are feeling like your microservices are getting out of control, one thing you can do as an exercise is start using something like step functions, in my example, to orchestrate it and see how many duplicates do you have of things. So in this example, we're actually going to still be that driver, but our backend systems are going to collect the fare from the passenger. So it's a fare collection system. And you'll notice that the very first step here, the credit card pre-authorization needs to happen. And so that is the payment auth service here. And on the right-hand side, excuse me, I'm losing my voice already. Notice on the right-hand side of the screen, the workflow we have created using step functions, and it currently only shows that the pre-authorization has failed. So on the right side of the payment auth, we have notify failure, fair processing failed. So two little steps here. Now, that is because we haven't said, what is the next step? And I'll click and show you the next step. So the second step is to charge the card using that pre-authorization code. So notice on the right-hand side of the screen, this is where it starts getting interesting and start being able to track like where you're duplicating your systems, because payment auth, if it succeeds, it can go to payment charge. So we've got the pre-auth code and now we can charge the card. Excuse me. But notice again, to the right side is the payment refund. That's the failure. What happens if it fails? Refund the payment. But guess what? We don't need to have a whole separate notify failure and fair processing failed. We are reusing and calling that same notify failure, fair processing failed. Easy for me to say. The same two microservices. So if you throw things in a step function and you start seeing that there's like more than 3 different notify failures that everyone has created their own, that might be time to start looking at some consolidation, like what things are common across all of these microservices. Like they all need failure routes, right? And then finally, we will update the customer accounting microservice and the account system when the payment is completed. On the right side, notice that the failure mode creates the payment back to the customer via the customer account credit fail mode, but then it uses the same steps that the other two prior two steps use for that failure. So again, this is where you get to call these microservices, and having things in a workflow like this really helps out. The other thing that I want to say really quickly before we kind of go over to our demos is that with step functions, one of the best things about this is being able to see where errors happen in the whole ecosystem. So if you get a notify failure, you're going to plug in a CloudWatch event, you're going to get some notifications, and it's going to tell you exactly where in the process it failed. It's the payment refund failed or the customer account credit, because you've got it all being orchestrated by a step function state machine. All right. I know that we're getting short on time, so I am going to leave the last few minutes to show up to you, Kavya. And I'm sorry I didn't take very many breaths to let you ask a whole lot of questions and do some dialogue here, but I think everybody's probably ready for a demo.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karol. That was a great presentation. I learned a lot from this. And let me share my screen to show the demo here. Can you please confirm if you can see my screen with monolith to microservices?
Not yet.
Okay. Let's wait for a minute here. Is it visible now?
There it comes.
Awesome.
Yep.
So as we have learned a lot of options for modernizations, including
Kavya, one small thing. Can you zoom in a bit so that everyone can see the details?
For sure.
Thank you. Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Sounds good. So this is a demo based on a workshop, which is monolith to microservices with AWS Modernization Pathways, and it's publicly available. So you can try this workshop in your own account, but beware that there might be some charges and you need to stop the resources. So what this workshop is all about is how we can apply AWS Modernization Pathways to transform a monolithic workload into a loosely coupled distributed microservices architecture. And this has different modules here, including moving to databases, moving to containers, and so on. But for this demo, I'm going to concentrate on module 2, which is moving to a container-based modernization pathway. So before we go about the demo, let me give you some context about what this application is all about. So this is called a Unishop, and this is for all the unicorn needs. You can go online and select an item and get it delivered to you, put it in the cart, and so on. So previously, the Unishop owners were not very concerned about the architecture, but they were focusing on business. But now they want to expand their business into ride sharing, banking, and insurance. And they really want a pattern or an architecture based on microservices to expand this business and make it technically strong in terms of architecture. So this is how the website looks like. We'll see what it is in next few minutes. So as I was mentioning in module 2, we would use moving to containers pathway using AWS App Runner. So let me give you context about AWS App Runner. It is a managed container service. It makes easy to run web applications, web services, and your APIs. And we move the dynamic application part to AWS App Runner, and we move the static part, which is the front end, to Amazon S3, which allows for static website hosting. So in this way, we are allowing to modernize our monolithic applications without any service interruptions. So this is how the current infrastructure looks like, where we have the application, which is based on Java language, and it's running on one EC2 server, and it's connected to a database, which is MySQL database. So if we go into the console here, let me zoom in a bit. So, and see the application instances, they're both hosted on EC2, and Mono to Micro EC2 has a Java application, and Mono to MicroDB has a MySQL database. So our goal is to make it modernize using App Runner and put it in S3 to make it more not dependable on other components for static website hosting. So as a part of this web workshop, we do have a VS Code server, and you can see all the code here. And Mono 2 Micro UI has the main code for front end to access backend here. I'm not going to go deep into this, but yeah, so initially we would need to containerize our application to put it in app server. And for that, we use ECR, Elastic Container Registry. Let me show that for you. So I have already performed few steps which are given in this workshop here, where we need to create ECR for our existing web application, and this is the guide showing the steps for that. And at the end, I have an image ready for me with the application here, which is called as monolith, and it has an image latest here. So the goal for us is to move this container or Java application into App Runner. So let me show you how we can do this using App Runner. We can go into the App Runner console interface here and say create a new service. And you can use the container registry and use provider as Amazon ECR, wherein the container images are stored. And I'm going to browse my existing image, which is monolith with the latest image tag. And let's follow an automatic type of a trigger, which means App Runner monitors your registry. And if at some time, if a new version of your service is image, it kind of updates it. And we can create a new service role for the permissions to access ECR and say next here. And let's give a service name saying Monolith API. Here in this case, it is the Java application. And then we can add an environment variable for this App Runner to access the MySQL database. So we're giving that through a environment name. Let us call it as Mono to MicroDB endpoint. And the endpoint value would be the private IP DNS of our MySQL MySQL database, and it would be in the EC2 here. So let me open EC2 here and the instances. So mono to micro DB is the instance which is running. Is my screen sharing stopped for any reason?
Yeah, I think so. Your screen share is stopped.
Okay, let me
Try
share.
again. No issues. It happens sometimes. Yeah, let me add it again.
Okay, did I
Good.
stop here previously?
Yeah, you could connect from here. Yeah, let's keep moving forward from here.
Okay, so I'm here at the step where we are configuring app runner to use our database, and for that purpose we are using our private IP DNS of our database here. And let me add it here. And for the configuration of having some health checks and monitoring, we would configure one health check which is of HTTP type, and add a route here which is actuator/health. And for the purpose of security here, we would be adding our own VPC for more secure access. And let's say custom VPC here and add a new connector. I already created one and I'm using that. And once we have all the configurations done, we can say create and deploy. It would take a few minutes to create. And for the purpose of the demo, I have already created this app runner service, and it has the default domain as this. You can even test this default domain by adding a /unicorns to see if the backend Java application is running for us. So let me test it here. So you can see the backend is being rendered for us and we are good to go. So first part is done where we moved our dynamic backend Java application into App Runner. Now let's move our static frontend into S3. So as a part of this workshop, we have a separate component for accessing frontend and how we connect it to backend. And it's through a file called config.json, which means if we can connect our backend URL at this in this file, it could access the front end could access the backend when it's needed. So I just added the same app runner URL here at the config.json, which means front end would be able to access the backend. So for the front end to be moved into S3, we use a command called AWS S3CP to move all the mono to micro like front end files into this S3. So let me show you that S3 bucket here. So the mono to micro UI bucket would be the one which is having the front end code after we have copied the files using S3CP. So if we scroll, let me go into the properties, and if I scroll down, there is a static website hosting options, and we can see that it's enabled, and we can now access the website through S3 bucket by clicking on this domain. So we can see that now the front end is being hosted on S3. So this is the example we'd like to show today. Yeah, make sure you clean all the resources once you have tried, but feel free to also experiment with different modules as well, including Strangler Fig pattern, which is discussed today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kavya. And don't we love unicorn all the way in Amazon? Like everything is unicorn based. And let me add Carol also. Yeah, I agree on that. Means it was a nice presentation, and obviously the workshop link would be shared. So I don't expect that in 10 minutes we were able to show you every single thing of the workshop, but we give you a direction that hey, what is there, how to move forward, what workshop to pick up. Because sometimes workshop may be not at the right understanding level of the people. They may be higher or lower. So that's why we take time to pick up something which will resonate to a lot of audience, and then we share it. So yes, this works, and then please go ahead and try this into your own account. So thanks Carol and Kavya for this. And now I couldn't stop by, there was a question that hey, can you give me an analogy for modernization? So obviously I had to do that. So let me bring up my slide, and I'll just give a single analogy to explain it. But yeah, great presentation, and the patterns which you talked about are really interesting, because everything has to start and follow a pattern. Otherwise you would be just haywire going into different direction and not achieve to the result you are looking for. So modernization, like we all know about modernization is bringing something which is new. Let me give a simple analogy so that you could all relate to. Probably all of you go to a tourist place and then you get these tourist maps with you, right? And then which place you go, you pick up a tourist map and you navigate from it. That works well, but there is a limit of how much I can zoom into this particular map, or can I point my own direction in that. So that's why what we did, now these maps have been modernized and everything is now in your mobile. So Google Map is a modernization version of what you already had into a physical paper. Now in a small phone, you could carry everything, you could zoom in, you could share, you could then copy, print, all these things. So this is basic idea of taking something which is there and then modernizing in a way so that you use the newer technologies and newer tools for that. That's what modernization is all about. And when I was thinking about this, came one more example to my mind as like, if you watch this American reality show, there is a show which is very old called Extreme Makeover Home Edition. What they do in this, they find out a family who is like struggling through hardship and their house is in a jeopardy and they cannot afford it. So they do a voluntary makeover of their house with all the furniture and fitting into that. So what you see is the pictures of before and after. So that's what a modernization is. We are not digging the foundation out, we are keeping the foundation, but we are building on top of it and keeping in and bringing in all the modern amenities which somebody could have, maybe electric efficient heating, maybe better fridges, maybe better flooring, maybe better insulation for heat protection. So we bring in more modern stuff. We still keep the foundation, but for user it is still a home, but it has been modernized now. So that's what analogy I wanted to share there. Great. All right then. Thank you. And now we have the next session for behavioral track, which is communication across levels and managing stakeholders. So thanks, Kavya and Carol. Now I'll add Parna to the stage, and then we'll add Shashank also to the stage. So thank you. Shashank, you're here. And let me now add Parna. I'll remove myself so that they can drive the communication.
Hey, hi Parna. Hi Ashish. You able to see my screen as well? Screen share?
I can't see your screen yet. I can hear you though.
No, I'm not able to hear you as well. Just give me a second. Audio is connected.
I can hear you.
Okay, my screen is visible now, right? Okay.
Yes.
All
Yeah,
sorted,
so screen
everyone?
is visible. I can hear you, Shashank. Parna, you can hear Shashank too.
Yeah.
I can't listen though.
Oh, let's wait for some audio difficulty and figure out, Shashank.
Okay,
No worries,
okay,
no rush.
cool.
Good.
Parna, I may not be able to
Hey,
hear
hi.
you. I'm just trying that once last time, and else I'll proceed further. Okay, cool. Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Shashank. I'm Solutions Architect from AWS. And along with me is Parna today. Yeah. And
Hi, everyone.
hello. Yeah. What we are going to do today is I will be taking the lead, and Parna would be in a role. So she would be in. Is my screen sharing again gone?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sharing it again.
Hey,
Sorry for that.
I removed it, Shashank. So don't worry about screen share. I'll manage it. I just wanted you to highlight on the screen, and once you share something, you would do it. So right now your screen is not there, but let me add
Yeah.
it quickly. And now I would
And
ensure that this is how it will be there. But yeah, I'll be there. Don't worry.
sure. Thanks a lot, Ashish. Thank you. Okay, folks. So today I'll be taking the lead, wherein I'm the solutions architect. I would be talking about how I'm going to talk about our architecture diagrams when we are presenting it to the customer. Whereas Perna is helping me out. She will be shadowing me. She'll be asking me questions. Uh, she would be just going through awesome builder sessions, kind of thing. What we do for solutions architects before they're being exposed to the customers. Okay, so Parna, feel free to ask questions, and it's okay to make me stop wherever you feel like. Cool.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So everyone, now, last week we had Jeff, who was principal modernization architect, and we had Bhaskar, senior technical account manager, who talked about how do you dive deep into target architectures, how we talk about POCs, proof of concepts, and the strategies to become a trusted advisor for the customer. Today, likewise, I said, I'm going to talk about how I walked through proposing the architecture to the stakeholders. We are going to talk about communications across all organization level. And I'm going to talk about my approach note. How does it look like? To begin with, these are the four things which work well for me. The approach to the meeting. The first is working backwards. Second is knowing your audience really, really well. Third would be is be concise, precise. And lastly, end a meeting with actions.
So,
Let's
Shashank, I'll
go. Yeah,
probably stop you here since I'm
sure.
learning and shadowing you.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I know in the initial meetings with the customer, obviously you've earned the
yes,
trust,
yes,
and now they know they are in good hands. And
yeah,
obviously, I want to understand the
yeah,
approach you take when you go for these meetings. So I see
surely.
these four approaches that you've
Yeah,
mentioned here. So I'm not very
yeah,
familiar with what do you mean by working backwards. So if you could throw some light on that. Plus, also, if you could give me some information about how do I get to know this audience. So, in the last session, there was only one point of contact customer who was there with Jeff, right? But
yeah,
once you walk into the room, as you progress, you will have several meetings. There'll be
yeah,
a mixed bag of audience, and there'll be some new faces. So, I want you to let me know how will you get to know this kind of audience before you proceed. So really keen to know that.
surely. So, Parna, I'll break it into two parts. It was a great question. I'll break it in two parts. The very first one I'll talk about is working backwards. And the second one, which I'm parking it for time being, would be about knowing the audience. Okay.
Sure.
So, first, talking about working backwards. At Amazon, if you're going to launch a product, what we write is PRFAQ. We write about how does this product look like? How are we going to tell it to the customer? What are the key values? What are the key points? Why customers should try this out and so on. Similarly, similarly, working backwards here is what I'm referring to as when you want to show an architecture diagram to the customer, instead of going into directly into architecture communication, show the big picture. Show them, give them real examples. Like if I have to present it to a senior executive, I'll begin with by implementing this architecture, you'll be able to reduce your operation cost by 30%. You would be able to increase your resiliency by 99.99% and so on. So what we do, we show them this objectives that by implementing this, you're going to, uh, you know, have this much amount of production, this much amount of increase, this much amount of productivity, this much amount of all their business objectives. They are tied up with our technical discussions. So, what we ensure that is whatever they wanted to hear, it's already embedded in my architecture diagram, right? So, it's just not about running through the architecture, the components, and everything. It's about how we help them enable the business objectives. Okay.
I get that.
Now,
So,
yeah,
Shashank, so in the
yeah,
last meeting, you
yeah,
gathered their business objectives, and
yes,
this time, before you directly jump onto the solution, you're going to tie it together and
yes.
convey to them how that business objective that they
You're
had
going to,
asked for
yeah,
is going to be achieved through this system. Is my
yes.
understanding correct? Okay.
Yes, yes, Parna. Oh, absolutely. We both are on the same page. And, just to add to it, if I have learned in the previous meeting that they were worried about vendor lock-in, if we are
Right.
suggesting some tools and if they're worried about vendor lock-in, when I'm presenting this time the architecture diagram, I have to ensure that the previous meeting, whatever we discussed about the vendor lock-in, it should reflect in my architecture diagram. I should be able to resolve that. So basically, I'm listening to the requirements, I'm putting that in, and I'm ensuring that it is part of our requirement gathering and it's reflecting in my architecture.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
Yeah. So
All
this is
right.
how, we show the continuity and we're building on existing knowledge basically.
I got
right?
it.
And that's how I refer previous meetings and learnings and I put them to use.
Nice.
Cool.
So,
Okay.
what is that pirate ship, Shashank? I mean, I see the term pirate ship over here. So, what is that pointing to? Anything that symbolizes?
Yeah. I'm going to talk about that in the upcoming slides. So basically, what I want to say is, when we talk about Lego blocks, right? We do not see a single Lego block. What what those Lego blocks together is created. So basically, if I've created a home, I have created a castle. I see the big picture. I do not see what colors were used or how many Lego blocks were used and so on. So what we want to say is focus on the big picture. Focus on the pirate ship. What is that pirate ship all about? Think of it like we are building a pirate ship where technical components matter, really matter a lot. But we are focusing upon creating a ship which can sail and we can carry that treasure along. Yeah. So once again, the emphasis will be make it crystal clear in your communication that you're tying your technical discussions with the business objectives out there. Start with a complete picture rather than talking about the components in the architecture diagram. Build the hype, create that hype, build that excitement by showing what is the end goal you're going to achieve. Focus on the purpose and the value, not just the technical pieces. And that's what I meant with this show the pirate ship.
Okay.
I hope
So,
that
so you
helps,
are
man.
not going to go into detail as in walking through the entire workflow, right? So, you're
Yeah,
going
yeah.
to focus on the big picture, like you said. Is
I'll
that
try to focus on, yes, yes, Parna. I'll try to focus on the big picture. I'll try to talk about it at a very superficial level. I try to
Mhm.
keep it in a pull and push mechanism. Basically, it will be in pull mechanism. If they're further interested, they will ask. They will ask. But gauging the audience, understanding that if not all are technical people, and it's a mixed house, which I'm going to talk about further, I try to, give the answers which is suffice. It will suffice, but we won't go much, much, much technically deeper there. Yeah.
right? Yeah. So, I usually struggle with how deep should we go technically when explaining to a mixed audience. So, I would really need to understand from you how deep or how long and how much to actually talk to that audience. Probably you could
Surely,
that. Yeah.
surely. Surely, Parna. So what I'll do is I'll break it down into two parts. First is about how I try to stay concise, and second would be is based on reading the room, understanding the audience, and how do I tailor my delivery. Okay. So
Okay.
firstly, I'll talk about be concise. If I'm a technical person and if I enter a room, I definitely know that I want my audience to understand what is this architecture diagram looking like. And in that trap, what we try to do is we try to overwhelm the people. Maybe business stakeholders also sitting there. We try to bombard them with technical jargons and we try to help them understand what is this architecture diagram all about. I can clearly tell you, I remember a conversation where a solutions architect almost spent 15 minutes to help people understand what is Kubernetes and what are the intricacies of Kubernetes pod scheduling. I know by the end of the 15th minute, all the executives were completely lost. Either they had opened up their phones, they were on the Slack, they were on the Chime, or they were writing an email to someone, and so on. You lost them, basically. So it's okay. We understand that everyone would be loving to talk about agentic AI, or they would be loving to talk about Kubernetes, or something we learned recently new. But we have to understand that your audience wants to understand impact, basically, of that particular thing. Like what happens when I implement Kubernetes orchestration or pod scheduling. They want to know the impact. They don't want to know the implementation in depth.
Okay.
So, so yeah. So what could be the better approach rather than
Hmm.
explaining 15 minutes would be is to talk about our container orchestration solution, what it does. It ensures that application automatically scales based on the demand. So when the demand is less, what it will do? It will reduce the cost during the low usage period. These are the words business would love to hear that. They want to see the impact analysis. Yeah.
Right.
And when I say concise, it's all about stick to the time.
If you know you are in a meeting for one particular hour, ideally I would love to do a dry run. I would like to present for 25, 30 minutes, but I like to take questions in between and I like to finish it in such a way that we are not even 5 minutes more than the, 1 hour duration.
So what do you suggest, Prashant? How do I stick to
Yeah.
is there a golden rule of how much time to spend, and how do I ensure that I'm on time and with the
Yeah.
right amount of information?
Uh, it even I do struggle sometimes when I have 50 or 60 slide decks to be presented in 30 or 40 minutes. Uh, I try to understand the room. I try to understand who all are sitting in. I try to understand how much they know basically, and based on that, how much to show. So if it is 40 odd minutes, I'm going to present. 20 minutes max I'll be presenting, 10 minutes I'll keep it for Q&A, and the rest 10 minutes in between whenever I'm presenting. If there are any questions, if we are digressing over some things, and if I have to rebase people on the same topic, I keep those 10 minutes for that. So basically, it's a good slide run of 20 odd minutes, and that's how I break it down. So I stick to my allocated time, something like that. Does that help a little?
Yeah, that helps. And I guess
Yeah.
the amount of time you spend also depends
Yeah.
upon the content you fill into the slide, right? If you
Yeah.
fill it up with too much, it's too verbose, I think you'll end up explaining. So that's also important.
Always, always, yes. If it is too verbose, if it has too much amount of content on your slide, and when I'm presenting, I literally know people are not seeing me, people are not listening to me. They are decrypting what's written on the slide, and I've
True.
already lost them. And if it is a font size 10, and if it is too texty, they will have hard time figuring it out what it is rather than understanding it. So,
Got it.
Parna, to answer that further, all in the end, I just want to say there is something which is called as 5 second rule. You
Okay.
flash the screen, they register it. If the participants get it, perfectly fine. Else, they lost. You lost them there. Okay. So I'm just going to show that quickly to you on the upcoming slide. Have a look, everyone. I'm going to show you the first architecture diagram. And now I'm going to show you a zoomed version of it, which is exactly the same, which is this. Yep. So this is a powerful test for your presentation slides. If I show you both of them for 5 seconds, what people will remember? They'll be like, hey, I tried reading the headline of the slides, maybe, and we saw 2 yellow boxes or 3 yellow boxes and one blue barrel out there. Yeah. Now you will be feeling like, this is not exactly what I wanted to present, which means I need to go back and rework on my slides. So my slides should speak on my behalf. They should be, minimal amount of text. There should be something like it should complement what I'm speaking. There are times when people come and say, hey, Shashank, you don't read the slides word to word, or whatever you speak and whatever you say, slides do match, but I had to make notes. I like that. I like that particular part, right? Keep less visuals, let slides speak for themselves. Fonts bold, less of text, diagrams to be there, minimalism, that's all. We are done. Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. I hope that helps, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that helps.
Cool.
Now I'm just thinking
Yeah.
like, or obviously
Yeah.
you're presenting the solution here, and
Yeah.
in this room full of people, there are people
Yeah.
from different levels, different organizations, somebody from
Yeah.
security, somebody from database,
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
who's a business analyst.
Yeah.
How do you navigate your conversation and your explanations as per a mixed bag over there? You're
Surely.
showing the same thing to
Yeah.
everyone, but how do you ensure that everybody goes back saying that I've got what I came here for?
Very true. I mean, the last line, right? I mean, it's a mixed bag, but as a presenter, I try to be like, this is a focus points I want to discuss, but I ensure that there is everything for the audience whom I'm addressing to. So basically, based on the personas, if they are developers, if they are, executives, business executives, if they are testers, if they are into any other role, I try to speak the language they are looking for. And how do I do that? The very first thing, before I enter any meeting, if it is virtual, I like to know who all are invited or who all are there as a part of meeting invite. I like to know their roles, their designations, and that's what homework I do. Similarly, if I'm meeting them in person, I like to know whom I'm meeting to, who all are people would be in the room. Yeah. If you have seen, after once I see that, what I do is generally, if you have seen the lighthouse, right? The lighthouse moves from here to here. So similarly, if I'm sitting in person, I try to introduce myself. Hey, I'm Shashank, I'm solutions architect, and I ask them what they do. Similarly, I start creating a map that, hey, the CTO is sitting here, CEO is here, the finance team is sitting over here, and so on. Yep, that's how I create a map. I try to understand who's who in the room, and based on what are the roles and designation, the questions they're asking, that's how I tailor my responses also for them.
Okay, so
I hope
once
that
once
helps,
you
right?
created a
Yeah.
mental map, you can kind of anticipate what kind of questions will even come for you, so you'll prep accordingly, right?
Yeah, it helps me to navigate mentally, and it allows me to answer, literally ensuring that I'm answering to the primary decision key maker, but also there is something valuable for everyone in the room.
Right. So if you know there's a CFO who's going to be attending, so you are going to be preparing beforehand for any kind of cost optimization questions and things like that, right?
Definitely. Thanks for touching up that. I literally know one of the presentations which failed just because the technical architect was busy talking technically, but he was not understanding that, hey, there is a CFO, there is someone who's from FinOps team, and they're trying to understand the financial implications of, the proposed solutions. Yeah, they are trying to understand the financial implications, and their questions are arising because of that particular thing, right? So understanding the audience, tailoring the responses, it matters a lot. I hope that helps, Parna.
Yes, that definitely makes sense. Now,
Yeah,
I've obviously understood how to
yeah,
gauge audience, how to
yeah,
come prepared, and
yeah,
working backwards, like you said, start
yeah,
from their business objectives and tie it
yeah.
down to the technicalities. Okay,
Yes,
so this is good, but how do I conclude this meeting? Is there some procedure or some action items
sure.
that I need to take care of when I'm concluding on a good note or a high note, so that I know that
Yes,
everybody is on the same page and they're
yeah,
going back with some insights from me?
yeah, yes. So before I start concluding, right, like as I said, whenever I'm proposing a new microservices, maybe execs will be looking for focus on, business agility. They'll be like reducing the go-to-market time. Technical teams would be looking for like what technology stack is he talking about and how do we implement complexities, deployment patterns, and so on. And the operations team will be looking for is like monitoring and maintenance approaches. So when I'm going to begin with a closure, I'm not going to ask, hey, thanks for attending and any questions. Not really. I'll be ending with an action list. Action list, which will be like, we need to finalize a vendor by this particular month end so that a cloud migrations is going to run on track. Or it would be sounding like, hey, we need to form a security working group, which is going to review the proposed solution architects by month end. Yeah. So security review of the architecture diagrams, whatever we are going to propose. So we need some teams to be there. So what am I trying to say is these actions, they are very specific in nature. They will be assigned to those stakeholders, and it will be also ensuring that we are tying back to the business objectives. So before I leave the room, it would be I'll start driving it in such a way that these are the action items, these are the things we are going to do, these are the deadlines, we all agree, and then always send a follow up email. It should summarize the actions, it should summarize the owners, mentioning the deadlines, all within those 24 hours. This allows, for me to maintain the momentum. It demonstrates professionalism, and any questions which I would have parked, I was not able to answer. And if I had to give any reference links, I utilize this as, one single email to maintain it all. I hope that helps, Parna.
Yeah. So is that enough just to have the minutes of meetings in a email, or is there any other supplementary tasks that you also have in mind after you close the meeting?
See, before I close a meeting, like as I said, I like to be ensure that I'm on the same page with everyone who is in the meeting. I like to, all the action items are documented, and I send back, if there are any pending responses. So I feel this much is more than enough, which helps me to be on the same page and, take it further. So if in case anyone has missed a meeting, or if I want to tie it back that, hey, we had, discussed few things on that particular day, then I can bring this minutes of meeting and I can show that, hey, we had taken some key decisions, or I was asking for these inputs from your end, or I was waiting for it since these many days. It allows me to, navigate such hard conversations easily well.
Right. And it's a good thing you mentioned, because there might be some questions you may not have been prepared to
Yep.
answer at that point of time. So you might have to revert back with those answers. So it
Yes.
is important that, I do my homework and come back with those
Yes.
answers as well, right? Because
Yes.
you may not have them at that point of time during
Yes.
the.
That's the time to, answer all your parked questions and give all the reference links, whatever I discussed throughout the meeting. I mean, I can't keep on dropping the links that, hey, we discussed this while I'm
Not
presenting.
enough to just
So
send a link, right?
yes, so I collate everything and I send it across in one email itself. Yeah.
Makes sense. So that gave me a good idea, Shashank. Thank you so much. It was
No
great to
worries.
shadow you in this meeting, and I've taken up
Sure.
some takeaways.
Sure. Sure. So I'll begin with the last few
Any final
slides of
tips?
ours. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So majorly, it's all about practice, and I can't emphasize that practice before you go live. The most overlooked aspect of architecture decisions is all about practice. Sometimes as technical professionals we think that I know it all, do it all about those particular services, and let me enter the meeting room, but it's not always enough. A good rehearsal, a good practice always helps you out. I always ensure that wherever I'm presenting, if in case it's my office, I'll be the first one to enter. I'll find a place for myself. I'll ensure that connectors and everything is in place. I'll practice first. I'll try to record myself. I like to hear myself back again. Sometimes I do use filler words like, hey, we discussed this, right? You got it right. Or sometimes I try to use filler words like as in, something like this, something like that. So these are repetitive words which, when we are not rehearsing it well, you may try to bring it again and again. And that's how I've improved myself, or I try to improve myself prior present to the, wider audience. Second is find a friend or find a peer who knows the functional content. Technically, whatever you're going to present, they can tell you that, hey, you missed this. These are the gaps. These are the room for improvement, and so on. Lastly, catch someone hold off, which is outside your technical domain. They will help you address a wider audience. They will be like, hey, Shashank, these are the slides which you presented well. These were the slides where you were like, when do I rush next slide? Right? Or when your explanations were not clear enough, they will help you understand these things. Yeah. So practice a lot. Own your content really well. There are times when I'm being asked, hey, are you reading from somewhere, or do we have some another screen out there? Not really. You should know the content, what you're going to present well. You should be able to answer complex questions if possible. And you should be welcoming enough that people are willing to ask questions. Yeah, cool. So, with this, I just want to say work backwards, be concise, know your audience really well, practice thoroughly, end with clear actions so that you can ensure architectural messages resonate and you drive results. Thanks a lot, everyone, for listening so far. Over to you, Ashish, if you're there on.
Ashish, you're on mute, so I'll take over. Thanks, Shashank and Parna. It was really great session and a really good theme clear next steps for people who would like to improve. So yeah, great job. Loved it.
And there was a
And
question about meeting of minutes of meeting, right? So now if you're doing online, it's much easier. Most tools have that summary meeting or meeting notes. So leverage those AI tools that is there to help. So you don't have to worry about missing something. But yeah, cross check before you send it to stakeholders, because not everything will be captured as you want it. So leverage that, but still do due diligence when you send those notes to someone. But a good session, great session at all.
I
Thank
love the
you.
way Parna brings in the curiosity into everything.
Yeah, that's the important aspect.
Yeah.
So I'll summarize what is next steps for everyone. Like I try to maybe sounding like a broken record for all the time, but I want to ensure that you get the best out of these sessions which are happening. And thanks, Carol and Kavya, and that was a nice session. And we will share all the links in a follow-up email along with the slides. Slides can be downloaded from the platform where you do quiz. So all the links, slides will be there. So leverage them for your learning. So make sure that you complete the knowledge check. There is one more badge up for grab. After a while, we will enable the quiz. Practice the hands-on workshop. We'll share the link in the email. Then be active and support your peer. There is a community in Discord where you can share your learning, share your finding, ask questions, answer questions. So feel free to do that and engage with others. And also share your learning widely. We see a lot of LinkedIn posts about certain badges. So tag audience, tag the presenters who presented the session. You learned something. It would be really good encouragement for them also, and would also help you to bring build a connection with them. So these are the four things which I want to share. So we are almost like one more session to go, and I know that it is a little short batch this time, but I still hope that everyone has learned a lot and shared a lot of stuff around it. Anyone, any
Yeah.
last
And
things?
yeah, last
Yeah, go
session, I'm
ahead.
excited what Carol has teased, right? Carol and Kavya, they're going to show all demo, seems like.
Yeah,
And it will be a modernization demo, end-to-end
modernization demos.
development. So that will be amazing. Looking forward for it.
Thank you,
And I
everyone.
think we'll have Jeff Scott back for the last behavioral session. So that will also be great. So yeah, see you all next week.
See you all next week. Have
Thank
a
you,
good
everyone.
one. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.